Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us today. This is Journey to Esquire, the podcast project of Diversity Access Pipeline Incorporated. And today we have another wonderful podcast for you. It's certainly a pleasure today for me to have Melanie Griffin with us. And let me go ahead and introduce Melanie to you guys. Melanie is a business litigation and employment law attorney at Shumaker, Loop and Kendrick, who is a past president of the Central Florida Association of Women's Lawyers and the Florida Bar Young Lawyer Division. She will become the president of Hall next year, 2021, 2022. That's actually this summer. And she has been recognized by Super Lawyers the past 12 consecutive years, Florida Trend Legal Elite for 10 years, and Best Lawyers in America for the past 5 consecutive years. As a result of her leadership, she has received numerous accolades and awards, including the Florida Bar's Most Productive Lawyer Award, Tampa Bay Business Journal Women of the Year, Angie Joseph Excellence in Mentorship Award, the Florida Bar's Small and Solo Firm Section Mentor of the Year Award, and the Florida State University College of Law Alumni Association Service Award. In 2017, she founded Spread Your Sunshine to effect positive change through mentorship and building confidence in others. An inspirational speaker in high demand, Melanie has appeared on national and international stages, including the Fortune 500 companies, one of the Big Four, the Alpha International Client Seminar, the US-Canada No Woman Summit, Women Empowerment X Los Angeles and Washington, D.C., the National Court Reporters Association, the American Bar Association, the New York Bar Association, the Florida Bar, the Paralegals Association of Florida, and the Florida Association for Women Lawyers. She's definitely excited to join our program today, and we are so happy to have her with us. Welcome, Melanie.
Thank you for having me. I am so tickled by the invitation.
Well, we're really, really happy. A lot of the things that our program actually dives into and a lot of things that we invest in seem to be really near and dear to your heart. So I think we have a perfect match for
I agree.
today.
Yes, definitely serendipitous.
Yeah, I want to start off with talking about your journey to become an attorney. So tell us, first and foremost, I guess, when you first started thinking about becoming an attorney, what were your thoughts and why did you decide to actually become a lawyer?
When I was a child, around 8 years old, I dressed up as an attorney for Halloween, wore the fake glasses, carried the briefcase, stayed home, passed out the candy, wore the full suit. So in some ways, it seemed like a dream come true from the very beginning. But that said, for anybody who's listening to this, who is trying to decide what their journey should look like, although that's a very short version of dress up for Halloween, become said attorney, in the middle, I definitely had a lot of fluctuation in terms of what my major was in undergrad and whether this was something I was truly meant to do. And upon retrospect, while I certainly enjoyed the practice of law, and have been very fulfilled by my career, there were also a lot of things that I was interested in and continue to be interested in at a young age, including service to my community. And I went to Florida State University, where I went to undergrad and grad school on a community service scholarship. And sometimes I think that with the emphasis that is placed on mentorship and entrepreneurship today that wasn't available when I went to school. I'm 40 years old as we record this episode. So, back 15-ish years ago, almost now, there just wasn't the same emphasis on the resources today that there were then. I don't know that if I had done the critical analysis, if it did fit my personality as well. I may very well have ended up here, but I may not have. And so sometimes when I work with mentees, I like to raise that because I'm so impressed by all of the questions that are asked by younger generations today who more thoughtfully consider where they're going, their trajectory. Whereas I feel like when I went to school, the pattern was a little bit more go to undergrad, go to grad school, get the job.
I totally agree. And it's interesting that you would bring up the different tests that we now have in schools. Myers-Briggs is one, and they have all these different personality tests. And sometimes I actually feel the same way. I wonder if I would have ended up here had I done or been a little bit more conscientious in doing those. But it's certainly something that we see more and more of. So when you were actually getting into law school and through that process, describe that process, and were you able to incorporate, I guess, any of these types of tests, or what was your law school application process like?
I don't remember it very well since it has been 15 years, other than to say it included a lot of anxiety. And certainly now I serve on the board of visitors for Florida State and continue to see the applications from people across the country and hear from students who have applied. And I can't imagine applying to law school now as competitive as it was when I was going to school. I know it can be very anxiety ridden for students these days. So my best advice though is to keep at the process. And to give one specific example, I was recently contacted by a student who applied to Florida State and from the surface level should have had a great experience getting in. Unfortunately, they were rejected, and they weren't just rejected. I mean, I think it was within like hours of their application being submitted. And I tell this story for two reasons, is that number one, he said, would you be willing to reach out on my behalf and maybe get some information about why? And I said, sure. And I encourage that because I think it's always great to get feedback, whether you end up getting a different decision or not, it always helps you grow. And in this instance, with this particular applicant, what we came to find out was that what seemed like a failure to consider his application and take it seriously actually was more coincidental, that it had to do with when he applied and there was a specific cut date that was coming up and he just was on the cusp of it. So when he interpreted that quick analysis as they didn't take my application seriously, when he knew he had friends that had their application pending for months and it seemed like the process was much more thoughtful, well, no, it actually came to find out that that wasn't the case at all. His was also thoughtfully considered. It just happened to be a lot closer to the cut date when he submitted it. Number two is that what I told him was, I said, I hope this works out for you, but in my heart, I know that no matter what happens, you will end up where you're meant to be. And that is not a lie. I truly believe that you go in life where you're meant to go. And wouldn't you know it, it was about a week later. And he said, while I'm still disappointed that I didn't give a favorable decision from Florida State, I was accepted to the MBA JD program, which was my dream, at a school that was as the equivalent, if not even better. So, and he's just thrilled. So my point is, keep up, get at it. Not everything's going to be a yes, but that doesn't mean that you aren't meant to be there. So keep going with your dream if it's truly your passion.
Awesome. That's really good advice. Would you say, and you went to Florida State.
Yep.
I guess, would you say you enjoyed, people have really varying experiences in law school, right? Would you say you really enjoyed your law school experience at Florida State, and just kind of what was that like for you?
Go Noles. I'm a triple Noles. So I have a heart for Florida State. I know we have some Gator listeners, I'm sure, or other, SEC fans, but that's okay. I'll plug the ACC for a second. But point being is that yes and no. What I mean by that is absolutely, I love Florida State. It's in my heart. In my experience was that, we're joking around, we're kidding. But even if you went to a different school, if you're a Gator, you went outside the state of Florida, is that Florida State certainly places a strong emphasis on diversity, not only in terms of race, but ideology, international students. I mean, it's a very inclusive campus. It's one of the top campuses for servant leadership, public leadership, and for people that go in and have the types of fellowships and opportunities. And so point being is that you get a lot of, international students and people coming from all over. So in terms of the collegiality and open door policy, not only did I enjoy it and learn a lot, I know that others, regardless of your affinity for the institution or not, enjoyed their experience as well. So I think you can rest assured that it does have a wonderful culture that in no way is like what you may read or hear about in terms of people ripping out pages or hiding books on you or things like that. None of that happened, at least that I knew of. At the same time, what I would also tell you is that if you go to law school, and I think make yourself as competitive as you can to interview for a job, law school can be a very stressful time in your life because you do have so many demands on your time. And so that's what I look back on is it was quote unquote a wonderful experience. And I was completely up for it. So glad I did it and don't want to turn anybody off from it, but I would never want to do it again. I don't know about you, but Jamila, but it's a ton of hard work and you put your nose to the grind. And a lot of times because of the way your exams fall, it may not be possible to go home for Thanksgiving or enjoy Easter or Passover or the other traditional holidays that you may celebrate with your family. And that can be difficult, but hopefully what you'll find is if you sacrifice for those 3 years, if you need to do so, that then it's worth it for you to enjoy the career thereafter.
I agree. I certainly agree. It's about sacrifice. You sacrifice for what you want, and yeah. If you could describe, I guess, your experience, because you did have a little bit of a twisted. You're actually a JDMBA,
yep.
And so you had that extra program, maybe that extra load. Did that impact your experience in a really positive way to have that kind of balance? It wasn't just all maybe law school, you had some other things going on. Was that really helpful? Would you do it again?
For me, I would, for this reason, is that it gave me an extra set of grades. So Florida State operates, if I remember correctly, on a B curve, B as in boy, either a B or a C. Actually, now that I think about it, it is a C curve. And that's actually important because there are several schools that operate on a B curve. And so if you're not familiar with that concept, it means that they're trying to make the average grade in the class a B if you're at that school. Well, at Florida State, they're trying to make the average grade in the class a C. And not everybody understands that schools are on a curve, period, the end, or that they're on different curves. And so that can then make it even more difficult when you're going to compete for jobs because you may be the same number in your class, you're number 20 out of 200. But if you're out 20 out of 200 at a school that has a B curve versus a school that has a C curve, your GPA may be lower at that C curve school than it is the B curve school. So point being is that, so for me, I quote unquote did fine in law school, but I was in the top half of my class, but I would say just barely. I don't remember where I was, if I was, in the top 45%, 49%, whatever. But I mean, it was in the top half, but I by no means was that top 5, 10%. And I know that sometimes there's such an emphasis placed on that. So, please do not feel like if you are not in that club, that there is anything wrong with you or you won't be a success, because 95% of the class is not the top 5%. You are in great company. So I'll start there. And then where I'm going with this in terms of the MBA program is that my brain, what I realized was no matter how hard I studied, I had a really hard time issue spotting and really doing well on law school tests. Where I excelled is I'm very much a black and white thinker. And so math was really my jam. And so I graduated summa cum laude from the MBA program. I have a 3.99. I still remember the one professor that gave me a B+ and ruined my 4.0 average. I blame him every day, right? But my point is, it was another thing that gave me an extra set of grades and extra time to think. And it also gave me an extra set of experiences and people to learn from, because then I was able to not only take part in legal clerkships and opportunities, I also took part in an MBA externship. And so if you're kind of trying to decide what you want to do and keep your options open, I do think that can be a good thing. The one downside I will share with you is that if you're going to get an MBA because you know your heart is set say on sophisticated transactions or mergers and acquisitions, then getting an MBA may not be the right degree for you. In that instance, you more than likely need a tax LLM. And so people will often ask me, why I ended up in commercial litigation. And part of the truth is that the law firm that I went to work for was full service business. And so it had a commercial litigation department, corporate tax, estate planning, and real estate. I didn't want to work in real estate. And I wasn't quote unquote qualified without the tax LLM to work in corporate tax or estate planning. And that left commercial litigation. And I thought, you know what? I am not up for another year of school. I already got the MBA. I'm here. I'm happy. I'll take the commercial litigation spot. But just be aware of that depending upon what you want to do. Because if you don't want to fight yourself to an MBA and a tax LLM, then you might want to skip the MBA.
That's awesome advice.
Yeah, just make sure you know what you're going for, because I did not do that research ahead of time.
Yeah, definitely really good advice. And you actually touched a little bit about your first job out of law school. And I guess it wasn't necessarily where you wanted to be, but would you give us a little bit more of a description of your first job out of law school? How did you go about actually landing your first position?
Yeah, so I do want to clarify, it wasn't necessarily where I didn't want to be. It just was more happenstance. It wasn't like I specifically said, I really want to be a commercial litigator. I backdoored it. And one of the things I want to encourage people is that I got my job through networking. And sometimes I know that is emphasized by career services departments, but I don't think that we always understand how important that is. And some law school students even feel like it's quote unquote taboo. And I know that in some ways I almost felt that way. Like, should I be working my network? Is it appropriate? And now sitting on this side of the fence and being someone who can be in a hiring position, I can tell you 100% hands down, yes, work your warm contacts. And so, oh my gosh. And so for me, one, in terms of my job is that I had, a fellowship in the Florida House of Representatives. And one of the members said, my family happens to be a client of a law firm where I know you've applied. Would you like for me to call and put in a good word? And at that time I didn't know, should I say yes or no? But thankfully I went for it and said yes. So I don't know if that's quote unquote why I got the job, but what I can tell you is they previously had not hired anybody from Florida State. They were a bull gator firm through and through. And I found my name, on that door. So I was very thankful for that opportunity and do probably attribute it to that. And again, I've seen it time and again, where if you work your warm contacts, that there's the statistic that 60 to 80% of legal jobs are not advertised. And I did not understand that because, growing up, I just thought that every job was on the internet or in the newspaper or whatever. And it wasn't until I became in a hiring position that I realized a lot of times there are many reasons that you don't want to advertise a job. You do want to find it, quote unquote, underground through your network. So for anybody listening to this who's looking for something, talk to every attorney make that outreach because it will pay off for you, I promise.
That is amazing advice. And we try to tell students that all the time. Your network is really your best asset when you're looking for a new job or you're looking to change jobs or you're just looking for maybe extracurricular activities outside of your job. It's really, really your biggest asset. So I love that. What would be some just final advice that you would offer to new and future law students?
One of the pieces of advice that I would give is to certainly seek a mentor. I think that is so important in everything that you do to really understand your place wherever you're working, whether it's a private firm or a government firm, and what your opportunities are, because there is so much to practicing law beyond the substance. And I know even the substance can be hard to grasp, but just in terms of the hierarchical issues that are involved, the deference that's given, but then also other issues that come up in terms of your job trajectory, partnerships, diversity, lack of diversity, maternity leave, just all the things. And so having a mentor is so important. I also think that when you begin your career, one of the things that I did not do was to understand my own worth. And what I mean by that is when you step foot in that door, you are not going to know as much as the other attorneys more than likely who have already been practicing a while. Certainly in terms of going into the courtroom or meeting with clients or whatever it may be, they have more experience than you do fresh out of law school. At the same time, you are there because you have a skill set. And what I undervalue about myself is that I'm really good at remembering details. I'm really good at connecting with people. And those are skills that other people in my office did not necessarily have. And so even though I was brand new, there were times that I could have better used those skill sets and brought them to the table earlier if I hadn't sat back and just always let the senior partner quote unquote do everything. And I don't mean that I wasn't helpful, but I think I was almost too timid or differential. And certainly you want to be aware of that culture in your office and know if it's appropriate. But when it is, you have something to offer too from day one. And so, use it to shine brightly and grow from there.
Absolutely. And one of the things that you talked about was the power of mentorship or needing mentorship. Another idea that we talk to students about is allyship. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe some experiences that you had that really kind of pushed you, even as a younger attorney, in terms of your mentorship experiences or even like allyship?
Absolutely. So I do want to point this out is that one of the most critical things that we want to think about in terms of mentorship is not only the direct feedback that you can get that can help you grow, but then Jamila, I think what you're also talking about, in addition to other ways it can benefit you, is that your reputation is what is said about you when you are not in the room. Just want to repeat that, when you are not in the room. And so you need to have allies and sponsors who are willing to go to bat for you. And those are two different functions. And so a mentor is oftentimes someone who maybe, I define mentor actually as someone who, one, is trusted, and two, can give you advice in that circumstance. And so I want you to note that I did not include age. So it may be someone who's younger, older, your age. And so a lot of times a mentor can just be someone that understands, and they may be closer in age to you, they may not be, but that person is more than likely longer term, whether you actually meet periodically or you call them for one-offs. You also want to make sure you have sponsors, and a sponsor is someone with influence who has a seat at the table. And because of their influence, you may not have access to them as frequently or connect with them as frequently, but it's very important that, the times that you do, that you have someone who is an advocate. So if you're up for partnership, you're up for a job, whatever it may be. And so one of the things I would encourage you to do is to cultivate these relationships. And to give us a quick plug, I know there are so many materials and resources on the Journey to Esquire website and beyond. On Spread Your Sunshine, which is my passion project, we also have an article that we recently released, I think I sent to you, Jamila, about a week or two ago, that is on creating successful mentorships. And one of the things that we talk about in that article specifically is how to continue to stay in touch with your mentor and sponsor without feeling awkward or like you're pestering them. And we even have some sample emails or notes that you can handwrite to them. And so that may be helpful to your listeners as well as kind of a guide of how to lay that off, because I don't want to talk your ear off here on this episode. Happy to go into it further, but also know that we have some resources on both sides through Spread Your Sunshine and Journey to Esquire that will help your listeners.
I think this is just a great conversation, because we try to explain to students how important it is to actually have mentors, the difference between a mentor and a sponsor, and just how important it actually is to have both of them, right? In their lives early, as soon as possible, and kind of keep it up. So no, I love those plugs, Melanie. And you actually, really great segue into one of the great creations that you have done, Spread Your Sunshine.
Yeah.
I think I remember the first time when I met you, it was at my in meeting, and you were talking about your program, and I thought, wow, this is just amazing. So can you tell us a little bit about it? Why did you create it? I mean, I think it's an amazing thing, right? So have at it, plug away.
Sure, thank you. So two thoughts here. One is that you saw me, I know, at a mentoring presentation. And so one of the reasons I created Spread Your Sunshine is to scale my mentoring, is that I love mentoring, I love giving back. And I found, though, at some point that with all of the students that were connecting with me and young professionals, that it was difficult to have one-on-one conversations. And also a lot of the questions that were being asked, even though they were uniquely phrased, they were in some ways eliciting the same information. And I thought, man, if I could get my information onto the website or out in a podcast or whatever it may be, that I could answer those questions and help people on a broader scale. And then when people did want to connect with me one-on-one, that hopefully it would shorten the length of the conversation, not because I don't want to connect with people, but we all only get 24 hours in each day. And so then hopefully I could answer their specific tailored one-on-one questions. And so that's been effective in that regard. The other reason, though, that I created Spread Your Sunshine that I would love to bring out to your listeners is that I honestly, at some point, got burnt out for the practice of law. And we can talk about that or not. In some ways, it's a whole nother podcast episode. But what I will say is that it's amazing to me that not only was this my experience, but I've talked to the people about this, is that Spread Your Sunshine is a passion project that not only allowed me to work on mentorship and speaking and authoring, I also created inspirational products. And actually, you see some of them over my shoulder, the stationery that I've made, and now it's, framed here. But it gave me a creative outlet and allowed me to take a step back from practicing full time. I still continue. So I was an equity partner at the time that I created Spread Your Sunshine. I gave up my equity shares, quit serving as the branch manager for the Tampa office for the firm that I had worked for 13 years. I transitioned into a new law firm and now serve in a reduced of counsel role. And so that allows me to work on Spread Your Sunshine and still practice law and serve my clients well. And what I found was that taking that break allowed me to love practicing law again and working on, creative products that were so much seemingly sexier than writing a brief because I had been doing it for a decade and a half. It really rejuvenated my spirit. And like I said, I found that I wasn't the only person, that it seems like the magic time sometimes around that 10-year mark where you've done the same job over and over again if you stay at the same employer. And if you don't find a new leadership role or outlet, then sometimes it can get overwhelming. And so sometimes it's good to have something else to do. And so I want to plant that seed so that when that happens, doesn't mean you're not meant to be a lawyer anymore. It just means you may need to find a way to shake things up.
Right. And, the burnout is real. So
yes,
I think that's a good tidbit, just being able to find something else that you're just as passionate about. And obviously we see that you have done that very well. So this year, or, coming into next bar year, you are going to be taking over the seat as Hall's president.
I am so excited.
I know. Well, this was another area where we had served together, but you have actually you've had a history of bar service. Mm-hmm. So this is not something that's new to you. What was the benefit or draw that you actually had towards specifically bar service, and what really kept you there? Because you've obviously invested a lot into it.
So initially it more was, I would say, advice from the mentors I received when I entered the profession that said, if you get involved in the profession, then the work will follow. And certainly that was in private practice. Although if you enter public service initially, sometimes people make a full-time career out of that, and that's wonderful. There's still benefits in the people you meet in terms of mentorship and other community involvement that you'll get out of it. At the same time, you also see public practice practitioners who will then transition into a private practice. And so again, getting those referrals and relationships established from an early age can be super helpful to you. What I would say is that I love bar service, so I am in no way knocking it. I also want to plant a seed, though, if you're establishing a practice, that I did see other, I would say, almost entrepreneurial lawyers who were really intent on building their book of business, and they were more intentional than I was. And so as opposed to getting involved in bar activities and thinking the work will come, they were much more specific, say if they were an estate planning lawyer, about specifically going and giving estate planning presentations, say to CPA groups that may be reciprocal referral sources, or to churches that may have had an elderly population. And so I only planted that seed because it just depends on how you want to get involved and build your book of business, if you want to or need to do that if you're in private practice. But then going back to bar service, what I more than anything found was not only mentorship and a way to give back the profession that fulfilled me, I also eventually found friends. And so the people that are still my best girlfriends to this day, that some of them initially were very much a mentor in that mentor capacity. And I think you have to respect the mentor relationship and understand that initially you cannot count on all of them being friendships. You need to treat it as a mentorship, but that is something that may evolve out of it, is eventually may become friends. And so I love raising up the next generation, working on the issues that are facing the bar, and then certainly have enjoyed the friendships that have come out of it too.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. We certainly kind of discount just the power of just being in a bar association and being able to interact with each other, and those relationships that end up being priceless, not only personally but also professionally. So that's the absolute truth. So we're going to wrap up. I want to give you the opportunity, Melanie, to just leave with us your contact information, as well as, of course, if you want to, but obviously for Spread Your Sunshine, I would love for everyone to be able to go and find you and find your website and find your products. So if you would like to, I would love if you do it, so people can find you.
Absolutely. Well, I am an attorney at Shumaker, Loop, and Kendrick in our Tampa office. So certainly if you look me up on the Shumaker website, you will find me there. And then as Jamila mentioned, my personal passion project is called Spread Your Sunshine, just like it sounds. And so if you go to spreadyoursunshine.com, across the top of the website, you will see a 15% off discount if you join our e-newsletter that comes out periodically. And so you can join the e-newsletter and get that, as well as if you want to, not mandatory, but look at our products and services as well. And then if you're more of a social person, then we're on 5 platforms. We are at Spread Your Sunshine on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And then we are at Sunshine_Women on Twitter. And the last thing I'll mention or plugged is that we just started a podcast and social media show. I am so excited about it. And we have been going live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And we push out the times that will happen on those channels. So you'll see it in advance if you follow us on social. And we just got our approval for Spotify and iTunes. So if you're looking for us on Spotify or Apple, we are now there. It's Spread Your Sunshine again, just like it sounds. So certainly would love to connect with you on any and certainly all platforms, and keep in touch going forward.
Thank you so much, Melanie. So you guys have a lot of stuff to go look at out there. Thank you again for joining us for another edition of Journey to Esquire, our podcast, and we hope to see you again. Take care.